Okay, now for that focus on really all the developments in the auto sector, we've got a Fact House this morning, Horma Sarabji, Vinkesh Gulati and Chetan Maini joining us. And, on the slowdown blues for dealers, massive layoffs as well as ancillary suppliers continue to struggle. So we'll tackle all of that and also, of course, discuss that cut on GST for EVs. But first, Horma, good morning. Maruti, which is the market leader, has been concerned about high inventory and uncertainty of demand, and that's been the case now for the past few quarters, speaking volumes about really the shape that the industry is in currently. What do you think is stopping consumers from going out there and actually buying new vehicles? Because we've been hearing all kinds of arguments for this, including the finance minister's comments on the fact that consumers are waiting for BS6 norms to kick in, to talk about, of course, issues on the consumer lending side. What do you feel is the real reason?
Well, honestly, it's a host of a lot of reasons. There's not just one reason. I think it's just all come together. And as you said, I think there is a certain element of people waiting for BS6 norms because certain cars are going to get obsolete by then. A whole number of engine changes are expected. So that's one thing. People are worried about having an old BS4 vehicle, the way the emission regulations are going and where the authorities are clamping down on it. Then I think a bigger issue really is the lack of finance, right now in the market, and specifically dealer funding, which is actually one of the biggest issues. There's a huge gap over there. So I think, that's really something which the industry is grappling with. Now the banks want, the security of a collateral, which wasn't there earlier. So just funding is getting much harder. Even at the dealer level. And, of course, there's also just, car prices have also steadily just gone up. And overall, the sentiment, it all kind of adds up to a sentiment of people saying that, look, this is not the time to buy a car and they're going to defer their purchase, and just wait and watch.
So get in Chetan Maini's view, and he's joining in right now. Chetan, this GST cut on EVs, it has been rather substantial, but the question is it going to really help to propel demand eventually?
Yeah, I do think so. I think that the rate cut down to 5% really gives a good impetus. That coupled with what was announced in the budget around the tax exemptions for interest, both of them I think will really spur demand in the electric mobility space.
Vinkesh Gulati as well, Vice President FADA with us. And, Vinkesh, what looked like a one-off weak festive season last year, that seems to have really taken a bad turn. I mean, the numbers really speaking for themselves, given the kind of acute slowdown that we've witnessed across the board. What has been the trickle-down effect so far in the value chain? Is there more than meets the eye in terms of issues?
So actually, yes, the trickle-down is really more. And because of the data being shared by FADA till now, it's actually going out in the market, which wasn't before. But yes, the consumer demand going down has really affected the market. The auto dealers are the worst affected in the trade market as of now, and I'm expecting this to go ahead further for 2 months or so. And I don't see anything good happening in the coming months.
Okay, Horma, everyone's also hoping that the slew of launches that are planned, at a time when inventory worth thousands of units is still lying unsold. Do you feel this would help to bolster consumer sentiment? Do you think this will lead to some amount of revival in demand? I mean, on one hand, we're hearing that the sector is going to remain sluggish for a year and a half. On the other hand, we're hearing hopes of a revival by festive season. What's your sense?
Well, yeah, I mean, you do get, let's face it, new launches, new products, they kind of, they spur demand to a certain extent. But again, it's very short-lived also. I think, we've seen a great response to new brands like MG and Kia, very, very encouraging. But as we know that bookings is not the ultimate barometer or measure of success. It's finally what translates into sales. And again there, it's going to be the ability of dealers to pick up sufficient stock, have the funding for it. I think, Vinkesh could actually touch upon that. I think this is really a big issue, which is not only just consumer sentiment, but I think at the end of the day, yes, new product does help, but what we found is that honeymoon period rapidly disappears. So I think from manufacturers' point of view, they have to do a lot more. They have to keep refreshing their products. The life cycle management has to be sharper. They have to constantly be making changes, because right now, you literally have to go into the consumer's house and woo him with something new, because frankly that pull that there was in the market, it's just not there, and frankly I don't see it coming back soon. Yes, festive season, there will be a certain spike, a certain, let's say, improvement in sentiment. That's when everyone rushes out and buys stuff. But I think, again, that would be short-lived. And frankly, I don't see the situation improving for the next 12 to 18 months.
Yeah, so it's looking very bleak. In fact, Vinkesh, we've been talking quite extensively on the channel about how a lot of dealerships as well are just shutting shop. You run a Mahindra dealership yourself. What are the initiatives being taken? Are you looking at, cutting manpower, inventory costs? Have there been layoffs?
So actually, this is the time of consolidation, and all the dealers are working on that. Seeing the overall market is not performing well, the consumerism down, so we don't have a lot of sales happening in the market. So what a dealer could do, should have done, like control the costs and reduce the inventory, whereas we are happy at FADA that all the passenger vehicle companies are helping us in reducing the dealer inventory. That is one of the biggest thing what is helping as of today. And then additionally, we have to be efficient in our manpower, productivity and optimal utilization, and see how we can, because the number per dealer selling has gone down. So we have to manage our viability in those numbers only. So all the dealers, even me, are working on cutting the cost and inventory cost, so that at least we are able to survive. And actually, as I told you before also, and Mr. Mani also told you, we don't see a very big jump happening in the retail. Whatever we are expecting will be a small blip in the festive season, which is coming September and in October. Nothing more, because this BS6, EV, all this is confusing the customers, and they are still waiting to see what will happen in the future and then come into market to buy a vehicle.
Too many transitions at play. But Chetan, just on the point of how prolonged this slowdown is going to be, agree that the auto cycle or other sector is going through a lean phase, but how long do you think this lean phase is going to last?
Well, I think that, we've seen ups and downs over the years. In general, if you look at how the industry has grown over the last 10 to 12 years, it's been at a good pace. So we are at a down cycle a little bit. And I think that will change in the next 6 months. I think electric mobility, it's a good time for one to invest in electric mobility, because in the next 3 to 5 years, this is going to be the next big thing. And it has a great opportunity for India to actually lead in this area, not just from our perspective in the country, but also at a global level in the electric mobility.
Right. Just talking about what else really is going to be impacting the sector. So, Hormas, are you also of the belief that, at best, when it comes to the festive sales, it's going to be just a very minute blip up, and we're not really going to see a complete reversal in the slowdown that the auto industry is grappling with?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I don't think, the sales are going to go, through the roof during the festive season. I think a lot of manufacturers will be launching new models in time for that. I think at the end of the day, it's new models that really spur growth, something fresh, something new. So I think, that's going to coincide with the festive season, and all that will, kind of stimulate a bit of demand. But again, then as we go beyond that, and what we're going to see also is a bit of a product drought in the run-up to BS6, because everyone's going to be holding back because there's no point launching a product where you'd have to recalibrate the engine or even change the engine, within a couple of months to meet the new regulation. So I think, that's really one factor which is really going to play out in terms of, let's say, keeping the demand subdued, because a lot of manufacturers have plans for new products, but they're just waiting until the new regulation comes into play. It makes sense. Doesn't make sense launching something now and then in a couple of months having to reinvest to, upgrade the product to the new norms.
Response to the Hyundai EV, the Kona, and I'm going to ask the other panelists on this EV push a little bit more as well. And given the cut on GST that we've currently seen for EV vehicles as well, do you see demand picking up for some of these vehicles? Hormaz? I think we may.
Sorry,
yeah.
Definitely. I think, cutting the GST to 5% is really good. I think it's a great first step, and we all know that electric mobility is the future. It's all a question of timing, when it's going to happen, and I think that's really the key issue. Sometimes I think we're just moving a bit too fast. We don't have the charging infrastructure. Industry is grappling with other issues right now. There's this whole transition to BS6, which somehow just seems to have been forgotten. That's going to have a huge impact on clean air. There's been, if you cumulatively with the oil industry and the automotive industry, over 100,000 crores has been invested in it. We can't just ignore that fact. That also investment has to be recouped. So definitely, I think electric mobility is coming. I think reducing GST to 5% is fantastic. Maybe even 0% would have been great because the numbers are so small. It really wouldn't have, let's say, impacted the collections in any way of GST, because the numbers just are not there. But it would have been a great stimulus to get vehicles in the market. Coming to the Kona, yes, the response has been good. From what I understand, the first lot has been sold out, but it's a very, very small number. Obviously, the numbers are very small. And finally, it's going to be the issue of charging infrastructure, which I think personally is the biggest bottleneck, because until that is sorted out, it's very difficult to really make sure that electric mobility really proliferates to the masses. And of course, there's the cost issue as well. That definitely is going to impact customers. The GST might offset that to a certain extent, but the cost of the battery, it's still very expensive. Yes, it will go down, but sometimes I think it's better to have a second mover advantage, see how things play out. We've got the whole BS6 transition happening. We should be focusing on that, and electric mobility will come eventually, but I don't think we should be rushing into it.
Chetan, the two-wheeler and the passenger cars, or CV, which do you think will develop faster in the entire EV ecosystem?
I think it's going to be two areas, one at product and one at the solution side. So the product level, two-wheelers and three-wheelers are going to lead the market, and also buses. These form factors make electric vehicles most business sense out of it. And overall, the shared mobility market would be much larger than personal mobility market. So personal cars would be the last thing that would come in. Shared mobility, two- and three-wheelers would probably be the first ones.
Okay, so Vinkesh, just wanted to understand from you, what exactly is the outlook on the volume trend for the next 6 to 9 months with the destocking of BS4? Is that going to be an overhang on volumes? And given how the year has panned out, do you think that there is a risk of disappointing pre-buy or festive sales?
So actually, at our association, we are not expecting a lot of pre-buy, because all the products have already been BS6 compliant, and this time OEMs are not going to make any mistake like BS3 and BS4. They're already prepared, and slowly and steadily they'll be feeding in BS6 compliant vehicle and moving out BS4. So I'm expecting by January you will find all of the products, or majority of the product, shifting to BS6. Obviously there will be some stocks which will be left over at the dealership, and huge discounts won't be there. A dealer discount which just to liquidate what he has. So I'm not looking at a very, very huge pre-buy. And like the numbers you are saying, yes, we are not expecting a lot of big numbers happening. Last year, the degrowth in wholesale started around the festive season, and the RTO data also showed that. I'm expecting the degrowth, the numbers which are showing what double digit will come down to single digit. And I'm not expecting any growth happening in future except for a month or two in between.
Gentlemen, thanks so much for joining us this morning, and doesn't look like we're expecting a huge revival, at least for the next few months in the auto sector. A lot of factors continue to be at play, and we will, of course, continue to bring you all the latest developments there. But for now, Kunal, let's take a look at what else is moving in the markets at this hour.
So a couple of